My sister accused me of stealing her necklace and called me a liar. My parents believed her and kicked me out without even hearing my side. What they didn't realize was that I had been paying her tuition and helping cover the household bills. So I stopped paying, walked away, and what happened next changed everything. The silence in my father's house used to feel like a warm blanket, the kind of quiet that comes from decades of shared meals and whispered secrets, but that night, it felt like a burial shroud. I stood in the center of the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, staring into the eyes of the people I had spent the last 3 years saving from total ruin. They looked back at me not with love, but with a cold, jagged suspicion that made me feel like a stranger in my own skin. I didn't take it, I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of a betrayal I hadn't even committed yet, while my sister Olivia stood in the shadows of the hallway, a faint, jagged smile playing on her lips that told me she had already won. To understand how I ended up being treated like a common thief in the very home I was single-handedly financing, you have to understand the Martinez family creed. My father, Miguel, was a man built on the pillars of pride and traditional loyalty. Growing up in Connecticut, the mantra was always the same: family is forever. It was a beautiful sentiment, one that I carried like a holy relic into my adulthood. When the 2008 recession hit, I was just a kid, but I watched the slow, agonizing erosion of my father's confidence as his construction empire crumbled into a heap of debt and bankruptcy. I watched my mother, Anna, wither under the dual assault of financial terror and a burgeoning diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. I was the eldest. I was the one who saw the red inked notices hidden under the junk mail. I was the one who heard the muffled sobs through the thin drywall of my parents' bedroom. And, because I loved them with a ferocity that bordered on self-destruction, I made a silent vow that I would be the pillar they could lean on. I put myself through a grueling computer science program, working 3 jobs, eating ramen in the dark, and wearing shoes with holes in the soles so that my younger sister, Olivia, would never have to know what it felt like to be poor. Olivia was 7 years younger, the golden child of my parents' twilight years. While I was learning the brutal mathematics of survival, Olivia was being shielded in a cocoon of manufactured normalcy. My parents were obsessed with the idea that she shouldn't suffer for their failures. So, while I bought used textbooks and took the bus, Olivia got the latest iPhones and a car for her 16th birthday. I didn't begrudge her then. I thought I was being a good sister. I thought I was protecting her innocence. I didn't realize I was actually raising a monster of entitlement. By the time I was 25, I had made it. I was a senior developer at a booming tech firm, pulling in 6 figures and sitting on a nest egg of stock options. I had my own apartment, a sleek, modern space that represented every late night and every sacrifice. But my parents were drowning. It happened 3 years ago, the moment the facade finally cracked. I had stopped by their house and found my father in the garage, his head buried in his grease-stained hands, weeping over a mortgage default notice. The shame in his eyes when he saw me was a physical weight. He didn't want my help. His pride was a suit of armor that had become his cage. But eventually, the dam broke. I found out they were months behind on everything. The medical bills for my mother's treatments were astronomical. And the crowning blow? Olivia had just been accepted to a prestigious private university with a price tag that might as well have been $1 million. They had promised her they would pay for it. They couldn't bear to see the light go out of her eyes. "I'll handle it," I told him that night, the weight of the family's world settling onto my shoulders. But Olivia can't know. She needs to focus on her studies. She shouldn't have to carry this. My father gripped my hand, his eyes red-rimmed. "You're a godsend, Rebecca. But please, your mother, she'd be so humiliated if the neighbors knew. If Olivia knew. Let's keep this between us." That temporary arrangement turned into a total takeover. For 3 years, I was a ghost funding their entire existence. I paid the mortgage. I paid the property taxes. I paid the electric, the water, and the insurance. When Olivia's tuition bills came due, they landed in my inbox, not my father's. I was contributing over $70,000 a year to a household I didn't even live in. I lived frugally, skipping vacations and luxury purchases. Also, Olivia could post photos of her blessed life on Instagram, featuring gifts that I had actually bought but allowed my parents to take the credit for. Every Sunday, I would drive 20 minutes to that house, bringing extra groceries I claimed were from a work event, and sit through dinners where my parents praised Olivia's grades and Olivia talked about her upcoming spring break trips. I would smile, feeling a quiet sense of martyrdom that I mistook for fulfillment. I thought they knew. I thought that, even if we didn't speak the words, they understood the magnitude of what I was doing for them. Then came the necklace. For Olivia's 20th birthday, she had set her sights on an $8,000 white gold and diamond piece from a boutique downtown. She'd talked about it for months, calling it an investment and an heirloom. My mother looked physically ill when she saw the price tag, but my father, ever the man who couldn't say no to his youngest, called me. Rebecca, he had stammered over the phone, it's a big milestone. We want her to feel special. Can you help us one more time? We'll pay you back, I swear. We both knew that was a lie. There was no money to pay me back. But I did it. I transferred the $8,000, and a week later, I sat at the dinner table and watched Olivia's face light up as she unwrapped that blue velvet box. You guys are the best parents in the world, she squealed, throwing her arms around them. I don't know anyone else whose parents would do this for them. I'm so lucky. I sat there, sipping my water, watching the sparkle of the diamonds under the dining room chandelier. A small, petty part of me wanted to scream, I bought that. I'm the reason you're not sitting in a foreclosed house in the dark. But I pushed it down. Family is forever, I reminded myself. Blood remains. The cracks started showing 2 months later during a routine Sunday dinner. We were halfway through my mother's chicken enchiladas when Olivia's hand flew to her throat. Her face went pale, her eyes wide with a frantic sort of energy. My necklace, she gasped. It's gone. The room went still. What do you mean, gone? My dad asked, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. I went and put it on tonight, and the box was empty. I checked my dresser, I checked my jewelry stand. It's just not there. We spent the next 2 hours tearing the house apart. I was right there with them, crawling on my hands and knees, checking under the sofa cushions and peering behind the radiator. I genuinely wanted to find it. I knew how much it meant to her, or at least, how much the status of it meant to her. But as the search dragged on, I noticed a shift. Olivia wasn't just looking for the necklace anymore. She was looking at me. Every time I entered a room, her eyes would narrow. When I offered to check the laundry room, she snapped. I already did that, even though I hadn't seen her leave the living room. There was a static in the air, a growing tension that made the hair on my arms stand up. We eventually gave up and sat back down to a dinner that had gone cold and greasy. You were in my room earlier today, weren't you, Rebecca? Olivia asked. Her voice wasn't frantic anymore. It was sharp. Accusatory. I blinked, confused. What? No. I came in through the back door and went straight to the kitchen to help Mom with the salsa. I haven't been upstairs all day. That's funny, Olivia said, leaning back and crossing her arms. Because I thought I saw you coming out of my room when I was heading up to use the bathroom earlier. And when I went in there just now, my door was open. I always close my door. I didn't go in your room, Olivia, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Maybe Mom went in to drop off some laundry? My mother shook her head, her face etched with worry. No, honey. I haven't been upstairs since this morning. The silence that followed was suffocating. I looked at my father, expecting him to jump to my defense, to laugh off the ridiculous notion that his eldest daughter, the one who was literally keeping the roof over his head, would steal a piece of jewelry. But he didn't laugh. He looked at me with a furrowed brow, his eyes searching my face as if looking for a crack in my story. Rebecca, he said slowly, it is a bit strange. You're the only one who's been in and out of the house today besides us. Are you serious? I felt a surge of cold-blooded shock. I visit you twice a week. I've been coming here every Sunday for years. And you think I'd choose today to steal a necklace? A necklace that I stopped myself, the secret of the money burning in my throat. I couldn't say it. I had promised. A necklace that what? Olivia pressed, her eyes flashing. A necklace that you're jealous of? Because you've been acting so weird lately, Rebecca. Always looking at your bank account, always complaining about how busy you are. Maybe you're not as successful as you pretend to be. Maybe you needed the cash. I felt like I had been slapped. The sheer audacity of her words, the absolute blindness to the reality of our lives, was staggering. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to shut this down. But they remained silent. My mother wouldn't even meet my eyes. I think I should go, I said, my voice trembling. Yeah, Maybe you should, Olivia shot back. And maybe when you get home, you'll find it in your purse and realize you just borrowed it by mistake. I drove home in a trance, the streetlights blurring into long, jagged lines of light. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A text from Olivia. If you give it back now, I won't tell the rest of the family. Just admit you took it. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I spent the night staring at my ceiling, waiting for the nightmare to end, waiting for my father to call and apologize. But the call never came. Instead, the next morning, I was greeted by a flurry of messages. Not just from Olivia, but from my parents. They wanted me to come over. They said they had found something. When I walked into that kitchen at 10 a.m., I still had a sliver of hope. I thought they had found the necklace in the back of a drawer or caught in the folds of a rug. But the look on my father's face told a different story. He looked disappointed. He looked disgusted. Olivia was standing by the counter, holding the blue velvet box. It was empty. I found this, she said, her voice dripping with a fake, theatrical sadness. It was in your old bedroom, Rebecca. Shoved way back under the bookshelf. The one place no one would think to look. I stared at the box. I haven't been in that room in months. Olivia, you're lying. You had to have put it there. Why would I do that? She screamed, the mask of sadness dropping to reveal pure venom. Why would I hide my own birthday present just to get you in trouble? You're the one who's always been the perfect daughter, the one who thinks she's better than everyone because she has a big fancy job. Well, I guess the big fancy job doesn't pay enough to keep up with your ego, does it? Rebecca, my father said, his voice booming, how could you do this to your sister? To us? If you were in trouble, if you needed money, you should have come to us. Stealing from your own blood, after everything we've tried to give you. The irony was a physical pain in my chest. I looked at the man I had spent $70,000 a year to protect from his own failures. I looked at the mother whose medical bills I had paid in secret so she wouldn't have to choose between health and hunger. And then I looked at Olivia. In that moment, I saw it. Just for a second. A tiny, triumphant glimmer in her eyes. She wasn't upset about the necklace. She was enjoying this. She was dismantling my position in the family, piece by piece, and my parents were handing her the tools to do it. I didn't take it, I said, my voice cold and hard as granite. And I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated in a house that I get out, my father interrupted. If you're going to lie to our faces after we found the evidence, then I don't want you under this roof. Get out, Rebecca. And don't come back until you're ready to return what you stole. I walked out of that house without another word. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. An automated notification from my banking app, mortgage payment for successfully processed. Minus $3,100.00. I sat in the driver's seat and started to laugh. It was a jagged, hollow sound that filled the quiet cabin of my car. I was still paying for the stage upon which they were crucifying me. But as I looked back at the house, I saw Olivia watching me from the upstairs window. She didn't look sad. She looked like she had just won the lottery. And that's when I realized that family is forever was a beautiful lie, and it was time for the truth to finally come home to roost. The air in the living room was thick, not with the smell of my mother's cooking, but with the suffocating scent of a trap snapping shut. I looked at Uncle Robert, a man I had always turned to for level-headed advice, but his face was a mask of mournful disappointment. Denial only makes this harder for everyone, Rebecca, he sighed, the words falling like stones in a quiet pool. One by one, they took their turns. It was a relay race of condemnation. My aunt, my cousins, even my parents, they weren't asking me if I did it. They were narrating the story of my fall from grace, as if it were a finished book. They had skipped the trial and gone straight to the sentencing. I stood there, my hands trembling at my sides, listening to them dissect my character. They spoke about how stress at work, or living beyond my means, must have driven me to steal from my own flesh and blood. The irony was a screaming siren in my head. I was the only reason they weren't sitting in a dark, cold house, yet here they were, accusing me of greed. Finally, my father stood up. He seemed to age 10 years in that moment, his finger shaking as he pointed it toward the door. Rebecca, I'm going to say this once. Either confess what you did with that necklace and return it, or get out of this house and don't come back until you're ready to tell the truth. The room went deathly silent. In 28 years, I had never heard him use that tone with me, a voice devoid of fatherly warmth, stripped of the family is forever promise. Dad, I whispered, the word catching in my throat. I'm your daughter. You've known me my whole life. Do you really, truly believe I would do this? He didn't blink. The Rebecca I raised wouldn't. But people change. Money changes people. I turned to my mother, my last anchor. Mom? Please. She didn't look up. She just stared at her hands, twisting her wedding ring round and round until her knuckle turned white. Her silence was a physical blow, a confirmation that I was officially an outcast. I think we should check her car, my cousin Michael said, breaking the silence with a sharp, eager edge. If she hasn't pawned it yet, it's probably stashed in the trunk. Good idea, my father barked. Give us your keys, Rebecca. This is insane, I snapped, my fear finally curdling into a desperate, white-hot anger. Search it. Search everything. You won't find anything because there is nothing to find. I threw my keys onto the coffee table with a metallic clatter. We marched outside like a funeral procession. The evening air was crisp, but I was burning up. I watched as my father unlocked my car and began a systematic, violating search of the interior. He checked the glove box, the side pockets, under the seats. Finally, he moved to the trunk. When the lid hissed open, a collective gasp went up from the group. There, tucked neatly under a reusable grocery bag I used for the food I bought them, was the blue velvet box. My heart stopped. I stared at it, my brain refusing to process the image. That's not mine. I didn't put that there. My father picked it up. He flipped the lid. It was empty, a hollow blue shell. He turned to me, and for the first time, I saw genuine hatred in his eyes. Still going to deny it? Did the box just grow legs and walk into your trunk? Someone planted it. I screamed, my voice cracking as the realization of the setup hit me. I haven't opened my trunk in 3 days. Look at me, Dad. Why would I take the box if I was going to pawn the necklace? It makes no sense. Convenient excuse, Michael muttered, crossing his arms. My father slammed the trunk shut. The sound echoed through the suburban street like a gavel. I've seen enough. Get out, Rebecca. Don't call us. Don't come by. Not until you're ready to make this right. Dad, please. I was sobbing now, the hot tears blurring my vision. Someone is setting me up. Look at Olivia. I turned to my sister. She was standing by the porch light, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She looked like the picture of a grieving victim. But then, she reached into her pocket to check a text message. As she tilted her phone, the light caught a sharp, brilliant glint beneath the high collar of her sweater. For a fraction of a second, I saw it, the diamond necklace, tucked safely against her skin, hidden from the world but revealed to me by a fluke of light and a glass screen. My mouth opened to scream the truth, but I froze. Who would believe me? They had just found evidence in my car. If I pointed at her now, they would just see it as the desperate, pathetic deflection of a caught thief. I was trapped in a nightmare of her making. I got into my car in silence. I didn't look back. I drove exactly 1 block before I had to pull over because I couldn't see through the wall of tears. I sat there and howled, a raw, primal sound of a heart breaking in two. I had given them everything. I had sacrificed my 20s, my savings, my peace of mind, and they had traded me for a lie. When I finally reached my apartment, the silence was deafening. I sat on my floor in the dark, the glow of the city filtering through the blinds. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. Hope you're happy now. You've upset everyone. That was the moment. The grief didn't vanish, but it crystallized. It turned into something hard and cold. I realized that my sacrifice hadn't been an act of love, it had been an act of enabling. I had built a house of cards, and Olivia had just blown it down. Fine. If they wanted to live in a world without me, I would give them exactly what they asked for. The next morning, I didn't cry. I made a pot of black coffee, sat at my desk, and opened my laptop. I opened a fresh spreadsheet. I titled it, The Martinez Debt. I spent 6 hours going through 3 years of bank statements. It was a masochistic exercise in math. Mortgage, $108,000. Property taxes, $22,500. Mom's medical, $47,800. Olivia's tuition, $151,200. Groceries, gifts, miscellaneous, $35,000. The final number stared back at me, stark and accusing, $377,100. Nearly $400,000. I looked at my own savings account, less than 10,000 left. I had been paying for their lives while my own credit card sat with mounting balances. I had been a martyr for people who didn't even respect me enough to ask for my side of the story. I spent the afternoon with a financial advisor and a lawyer. "You're under no legal obligation, Rebecca," the lawyer told me, looking over the records with a pitying expression. "These were voluntary gifts. You can stop today." "Then stop them," I said. I went home and began the great shutdown. With every click of the cancel button, I felt a piece of the weight lift. Cancel mortgage autopay. Cancel electric bill. Withdraw tuition installment. I was reclaiming my life, one confirmation number at a time. 2 days later, the silence was broken by a call. From Melissa, Olivia's former roommate. "Rebecca? I heard something at the campus coffee shop yesterday." Olivia was there with her friends. She was laughing, Rebecca. "She said she finally got rid of the competition and that she'd hidden the necklace to make you look like a thief so my parents would stop comparing her to you." "Thank you, Melissa," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I already knew. But thank you for confirming I'm not crazy." I mailed the letter that evening. It was a thick envelope containing a copy of the spreadsheet and a brief, formal note. "Effective immediately, all financial support for the Martinez household has ceased." Attached is a summary of the $377,100 I have contributed over the last 3 years. "Since I am a thief, I'm sure you'll be much happier managing your own finances without my tainted money." The explosion happened 3 days later. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. My father's voice on the voicemail was a cocktail of rage and terror. "What the hell is this, Rebecca? The bank called. The mortgage is bouncing. Is this your idea of a joke?" I called him back. "It's not a joke, Dad. It's a consequence. You can't do this," he screamed. "We're your family. Your mother needs her meds." "Then I suggest Olivia sells that necklace she's been hiding," I replied. "The one I saw reflected in her phone the night you threw me out. I'm sure $8,000 will cover a few months of mortgage." There was a dead silence on the other end. A long, agonizing pause where the truth finally started to leak through the cracks of his denial. What did you say?" "You heard me. Goodbye, Dad." A week later, I met my mother at a quiet cafe. She looked haggard. She looked like the reality of their situation had finally hit her, not just the financial reality, but the moral one. "Olivia confessed," she whispered, her voice trembling. "She told us everything. She was jealous, Rebecca. She wanted you gone." "I know," I said, sipping my tea. We found the payment records. Your father didn't believe the spreadsheet until he logged into the bank portals. He had no idea you were paying for everything. We thought it was the insurance or the state aid. You thought that because it was easier to believe a lie than to admit your eldest daughter was carrying you on her back," I said. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "Please, Rebecca." "The house." Olivia had to drop out of her classes. "We can't pay the tuition. We're going to lose everything." I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I didn't feel the eldest daughter instinct to reach for my checkbook and make the pain go away. "Mom," I said gently, "you told me to leave. You told me not to come back until I told the truth." "Well, the truth is on that spreadsheet. And the truth is, I'm done." "What are we supposed to do?" she gasped. "The same thing I did when I was 22 and working 3 jobs," I said, standing up. "You figure it out. Family is forever, right? I'm sure you'll all find a way to get through this together." I walked out of the cafe and into the sunlight. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't an ATM. I wasn't a martyr. I was just Rebecca. And as I drove away, I realized that sometimes the only way to save a family is to let them finally face the truth of who they are when the safety net is gone. The air in the quiet, sterile coffee shop felt thin, as if the oxygen were being sucked out by the sheer weight of the secrets we had kept from each other for years. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw the jagged lines of exhaustion that no amount of concealer could hide, a map of the silent struggle she had endured while I played the role of the invisible savior. "You knew I was helping, Mom," I said, my voice devoid of the anger that had fueled me for weeks, replaced now by a hollow, aching clarity. "You just never asked how much, because if you knew the number, you wouldn't have been able to look me in the eye while you let Olivia call me a thief." My mother's hand trembled as she reached for her latte, her fingers ghosting over the table. "We should have asked," she whispered, her eyes brimming with a shame that was finally, painfully naked. I am truly sorry, Rebecca. Not just for the necklace, but for everything. For taking advantage of your heart for so long. We sat in that booth for 2 hours, peeling back the layers of a family dynamic that had become a masterpiece of dysfunction. She admitted that my father's pride had been a cage. He couldn't acknowledge our financial dependence on me because, in his mind, a father who can't provide isn't a father at all. I, in turn, spilled out the years of resentment I had buried, the missed vacations, the constant anxiety, the crushing weight of being the perfect daughter while my sister was allowed to be the happy one. By the time we walked out into the cool afternoon air, the world didn't look different, but I felt lighter. It wasn't full forgiveness. That's a long, winding road, but it was the first step toward a map. That evening, the phone rang. It was Dad. His voice was gruff, clearing his throat so many times I thought the line was breaking up. He didn't have Mom's eloquence, but the awkwardness of his apology made it feel more real. I was wrong about you, Becca, he said, the words sounding like they were being pulled from his chest with pliers. I'm sorry. More sorry than a man should ever have to be to his own child. Olivia's reach out was different. She sent a letter, 6 pages of frantic, looped handwriting. She admitted to orchestrating the entire theft out of a toxic cocktail of jealousy and a strange, warped desire to see me fail. You were always the perfect one, she wrote, the ink smudged in places. I just wanted them to see you weren't so perfect after all. I never thought you'd actually stop paying for everything. That last sentence was the kicker. It proved that even her remorse was tethered to the sudden disappearance of her safety net. But I realized then that I couldn't control her growth, only my own. In the months that followed, the Martinez family began the brutal, necessary process of redefinition. My parents downsized to a tiny, one-bedroom apartment they could actually afford. Dad took on extra shifts and Mom found a part-time job at a florist, arranging bouquets with her arthritic hands, a job she actually loved because it gave her a sense of purpose that wasn't tied to my bank account. I, meanwhile, checked into a different kind of renovation. I started seeing Dr. Lena Thompson, a therapist who didn't mince words. What your family did, she told me during our first session, was a form of emotional exploitation. You were cast as the caretaker before you were even an adult. With her help, I began to unpack the eldest daughter syndrome that had governed my life. I realized that my worth wasn't a fluctuating stock price based on how many bills I paid for others. I started saying no to the small things so I could say yes to myself. I joined a hiking club, reconnected with friends I'd ghosted because I was too tired from working 2 jobs, and for the first time in my life, I looked at my 401k and saw a future that belonged to me. The emotional recovery was far harder than the financial one. There were days when the guilt would claw at my throat, when I'd see a photo of my parents' new, cramped kitchen and want to reach for my checkbook. But I would repeat Dr. Thompson's words like a prayer. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're the floorboards of a healthy life. 6 months have passed since the night of the stolen necklace, and the transformation in my family is nothing short of a miracle born of fire. Olivia is working 2 jobs while finishing her degree. She's tired, she's stressed, and she's finally, for the first time, proud of herself. It feels different when you're paying for the credits yourself, she told me over coffee last week. I actually pay attention in lecture now because I know exactly how many hours of waitressing it took to sit in that chair. I eventually agreed to help with one specific thing, Mom's specialized medication. But I set the terms. The money goes directly to the pharmacy. It is a gift, not an obligation, and it is conditional on mutual respect. My father didn't argue. He's back in school himself, taking construction management courses to catch up with the world that passed him by while he was hiding in his garage. Our first family dinner since the exile was quiet. There were no $8,000 necklaces, no expensive steaks, and no pretenses. We ate simple pasta in their small apartment. We talked about the weather, about Dad's classes, and about the hike I'd taken over the weekend. For the first time, we weren't a provider and her dependents. We were just 4 people trying to figure out how to be a family without the crutch of a secret bank account. I look back at that girl who stood in the driveway, crying as her father searched her trunk, and I want to hug her. I want to tell her that the betrayal wasn't the end of her story, it was the catalyst for her freedom. The true cost of family is forever isn't measured in dollars, but in the courage it takes to demand the respect you deserve. I don't know if we'll ever be as close as we were when the lies were comfortable, but I know we are more honest now. And honestly, that's worth more than all the diamonds in the world. If you're out there, feeling like an ATM for the people you love, please remember, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop carrying them so they can finally learn how to walk.